Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Homeschool Minnesota. This podcast is an outreach of MÂCHÉ, Minnesota Association of Christian Home Educators. So glad you're here. My name is Dayle Annand. I'm your host. I just wanted to, I'm super excited about today's podcast for a lot of reasons, but have you ever been in a place in your parenting where you are struggling with anxiety? How many like to say every single day? I have. I've been in that place. And as your children grow and they get into new stages, you start to wonder, what am I doing? Am I doing this okay? Is there, what can I do about this? And then are you feeling anxious in your day-to-day life? I know that a lot of people struggle with anxiety, and maybe not to the point where you have to be medicated, but to the point where you really need to do something about it. And our guests today, Andy and Cara Root, are from Minneapolis, which is so much fun because we get to talk to hometown people, which I love to do. They were in that situation in their life and in their parenting, and they did something unusual and unique about it. And so today we have them with us. They're going to talk to us about their experience and just kind of talk to us about their book. Now, when I start marking books up, you all, it means that it did something for me. So this is the book right here, A Pilgrimage into Letting Go. We'll talk more about that later, but I want to just welcome Dr. Andy and Cara Root. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I'm
Great
so
to be
glad
here.
you guys are here today. Can you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves and your family?
Yeah, do you
Go
want to
ahead,
start,
Andy.
Cara?
Yeah.
No. See, well, what we do is we pass the baton really well to each other.
Yep, it's a team effort.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so we're in the Twin Cities, like you said, and we have two children. They are both in college now. So this book was towards we did this pilgrimage, which we'll talk about, when our son was a rising senior, so the summer before his senior year. But he is now, my gosh, halfway through his junior year of college. So,
Wow.
yeah, and then our daughter is a freshman in college, and so we've been living for almost 3.5 months as empty nesters with a 1-year-old chocolate lab that is now utterly spoiled
That's awesome.
and thinks she runs the house. But yeah, that's where we're at. And Cara's a pastor, and I'm a professor teaching theology and the practice of ministry at Luther Seminary.
Wonderful.
And this book happened to come out right when we're in a whole new chapter of letting go. I mean, this empty nest thing, it's no joke.
No, it hits you, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah. We empty nested when we were missionaries in Japan, and our last child was with us, and we had to put him on an airplane back to Minnesota. And I'm like,
oh wow,
I'm empty nesting in a nation that I've only lived in for about 5 months, and my kids are all 17,000 miles away.
Yeah, well, that's
yeah,
tough.
it was rough.
Mhm.
Now it's not so bad, I got to say. But
Well,
yeah,
good.
it's tough. It's tough. Yeah, because we enjoy those little kids. They bring a lot to our lives. But so what actually made you guys think to yourselves? Tell us about the circumstances in your life that brought you to doing a pilgrimage.
Yeah, so I had read about pilgrimages for quite a while and had wanted to take one, but then the pandemic hit, and in the pandemic we had talked a little bit about trying to do one as a whole family, because walking is such a important part of our family life. We're 4 introverts, and when we're at home, we're kind of all in our own corners. So travel and walking is really where we connect. And so we had planned it out, and I mean, as we describe in the book, 2 years in a row, something happens and the plans get yanked. But it turns out that God sort of had the perfect timing in mind for us, and we were ready when the time came, and our kids were more ready than they would have been if we had tried to do it earlier, just because of what was going on in each of their lives. But I don't think we realized that it was going to be this lesson in or this big metaphor for letting them go in their lives, and watching them turn into who God had for them to be. That doesn't necessarily depend on our direction.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because one of the things you guys talk about is, well, I like one of your quotes, and I'm not going to spoil it because it comes at the end, and I want to talk about it specifically. So we'll talk more about the pilgrimage. You guys did a 63-mile pilgrimage with your children. Can you talk to help with the anxiety? And to me, I feel like that's just anxiety right there. Just the idea. First of all, everybody has to put everything down to a backpack that you're going to do this 63-mile hike with. That's anxiety ridden. And then you're doing this pilgrimage through a country but personally, that's the only country I probably want to do a pilgrimage through. So I totally get it. But talk a little bit about where you went, what the experience was, some just different stories from it. What was it that you chose and why?
Yeah, well, we had like Car had said, she'd been really interested in doing a pilgrimage for a long time, and so we do walk as a family. Like we've traveled all over the place, and we've had enough airline miles because I travel so much to bring the kids places, but we've never had enough money to do anything when we've been at places. You know, like we can go to Paris, but we don't have any money to do anything in Paris, so we just walk. Like we just
Yeah,
walk around Paris. And
that's
so,
great.
and Cara, you know, she's a mystic in her own right, and so she wanted to do this pilgrimage, and then we decided to do it together in Scotland, the borderlands of Scotland. So this pilgrimage is called the St. Cuthbert's Way, and so it's kind of southern Scotland, but you walk it in. If people can get their minds around this, northern England is where it ends in Northumbria, and yeah, it's based on this 6th century saint named St. Cuthbert, who was this kind of Celtic saint who I walk this path to this holy island of Lindisfarne, which is where it ends on this holy island that you can only get to when the tide is out, or else there's no other. Well, I guess you could get a boat or you could
What
swim if
happens
you
when
were
it comes in
crazy.
as you're walking?
Well, it's really fascinating because the way the pilgrims cross it, if you're kind of taking the spiritual walk, there's a causeway that you can drive over, or you can walk it on the mud flats. But there are these big kind of like telephone poles that are sunk into the mud with little kind of nests on top of them. And if you get
No.
stuck, you climb up into that. And
Yeah,
there's a sign.
they
Yeah,
say that you can either pay, 5 figures to be picked up or you can spend the night up there. So
yeah, there's a telephone number up there
That's
that if
no
you get stuck,
joke.
yeah, and then
Wow.
the story is that you call somebody and they're like, "Okay, well, we can come pick you up, but that will be 10, that'll be 10,000 pounds, or you can you can spend the night." And so, yeah, we made sure that we timed it so that would not happen to us.
not a
So,
risk, right?
yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, I mean, I just find this so amazing. So tell me about when you told your kids, "Hey kids, we're going to do this and this is why we're going to do this." What was their reaction and what kind of did you have to walk through some things with them as a family? Like what do you mean anxiety or what do you mean, what is this? What is the purpose of this? And what did you say to them?
Yeah, so they were pretty up for the adventure of it. And because of their experience in camp, they were accustomed to a
Yeah.
rhythm of praying 3 times a day. So we told them that was going to be part of this journey too. And we didn't say to them like we're trying to combat anxiety by walking with you, but we we did within ourselves just I don't even know necessarily how much that was part of the intention more than it was the result of saying, oh, there really is a way of living um more connected
Yeah.
to God and each other with a sense more of stillness. And I mean, I think one thing we sort of forget is that walking is really the physical form of prayer for the Christian faith. I mean, Jesus walked all over the place, and there's one theologian that calls God the 3 mile an hour God. So something happens when you slow yourself down enough to just
Yeah.
be only as fast as your body can move. And then you hear each other, you see each other, you see the world around you in a different way, you're impacted by the world in a different way. So that they were on board for that in theory. And then of course, the first train ride where we landed in the station and had to go to our hotel before the pilgrimage even stopped, it was like a 2 or 3 mile walk and we were dragging our luggage and they were like complaining the whole time. And we thought, oh no, what have we gotten ourselves into? So we had rough
Typical.
moments too, but even that, there's humor in it looking back, and you find.
Yeah.
I found myself every time we'd arrive at a hotel. It was so nice that we had our own room and they had their own room, and we got space from each
Yeah.
other. But I really was like trying hard not to say, and don't forget to take a shower now, and don't forget to make sure you have enough, water to drink, and
Brush
like
your
those
teeth.
sorts of things. Yeah. So that was the lesson for me too, was like, hey, you've been saying this stuff to them since they
Hmm.
were, 1 years old. They're almost done with this. And
Yeah.
and what would it be like to be with them and is it really the worst thing if they're the stinkiest person in the restaurant? Like, let's just see what it's like to be with them and not be always telling them what to do.
Yeah.
So it really a lot of that happened internally, I think, for us. I think maybe in retrospect, they're like, "Oh, that's what you were thinking about?" Really,
Mm.
we were just trying to be as present as we could.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Mm.
So this is where I wanted to talk a little bit about, well, no, I guess I want to ask this other question first. So you talk about prayer 3 times a day. And I think for a lot of parents, that's just like, what in the world? Why, I mean, not that we don't, I mean, yeah, you pray 3 times a day over your meal, or you pray in the morning before you start your day, you pray before you go to bed at night, and somewhere in the middle there, probably you throw up a prayer too. But you were intentional about it. And you had like, you were thinking like through journaling and through different readings and scriptures and different things like that. Talk a little bit about like just your kind of intentionality with prayer and what that looked like.
Yes, I'll take this one, Andy, because I know there's gonna be some coming up that are way more in your ballpark. I put together some liturgies of prayer. So they were drawn from some things. Now we don't have anything written by Cuthbert, but
Mm,
drawn from things from the tradition of Saint Cuthbert. So they were morning, evening, liturgies and readings that had to do with being in the place that we were in. So they're prayers about walking or prayers about nature that come from the Psalms or have been prayed for centuries in certain traditions. So I just kind of compiled a little. We had like laminated morning, midday, evening prayer bookmarks, basically, and we stopped and read our prayers together and spent some time in silence as we did that. And the funniest part related to that is we came across some fellow pilgrims. This was a joy of the trip, was that you would run into the same people sometimes
yeah.
at different legs of your journey. And this one couple was religious and had talked about wanting to have prayers, and I horrified my daughter by giving them a copy of our prayer bookmarks. She immediately ran and tattled on me to dad that mom's giving prayers out to strangers. Um, but it was there, they had learned how to do this at a summer camp. So there was not the resistance we anticipated that there would be. And it kind of became a nice, sometimes it's nice to have words that you're not coming up with on the spot,
Mm.
but to sort
Right.
of rest yourself, like in the Psalms or in words that have been prayed by others before. And they mean something different in each new location and state of being.
Yeah, and I think we were really clear from the start that this wasn't tourism. I mean, like you're in the infrastructure of tourism. You're on a flight and you're on trains and things like that. But we were just really intent that this was a pilgrimage, and we weren't overly deterministic on what that had to mean for them, but that this is what this was. And we had just, we had a deep experience. I mean, we had a really hard time during the COVID shutdowns, and particularly our oldest was just out of
Mm,
school for a long time. It was just very difficult, where he was basically just stuck in his room at a pretty difficult
mm,
time in adolescence, and yeah, we had thoughts like this kid didn't move more than 50 steps a day or 100 steps a day. I mean, it was pretty difficult. So towards the end of that, one of the things that became very helpful, and it's more his story than ours, but like starting to walk, and we had to start walking him, like almost like walking the dog, where we just said, I came to his room, was like, we need to, you're gonna, I have to take the dog for a
yeah.
3 mile walk, you're gonna walk with me for 3 miles. And he resisted that for a while, but eventually then he started walking, and he was walking 6-7 miles a day. And so he kind of went on this trip thinking, it's hard to know what he was completely reflecting on, because he was at his angsty teenager stage, but there was a sense that there's something that can meet you on this kind of walk, and something had
Mm,
met him. um some spiritual reality had met him in this walk. And so there was an openness to go, that we tried to frame this was a pilgrimage. And when you're on the path, that you can't control it. And that's really what we were trying to get at this book,
yeah.
is that our kind of modern anxiety really has to do with the fact that we as modern people think we can control everything.
Yeah.
And it would be pretty absurd, actually, if we weren't just so darn good at it. Like, we actually are
Right.
pretty good at controlling things. But it does impose a deep kind of sense of anxiety on us. And we are of a generation that's kind of sucked deeply in thinking that what it means to be a good parent is to control your kids or to control the circumstances your kids face. And I think one of the great spiritual kind of moves of going on a pilgrimage is that you get on that path and you're like, you do some things to control, like we're going to stay here, we're going to stop there, this is the plan. But besides that, you just have to be open to what meets you on the trail, and you just do it towards God and with one another, and whatever occurs on the way is what you will let occur on your way. And so for Car and I, it was really detoxing the the I guess 17, I guess 17, almost 18 years of being kind of control freak parents. Every step for us was kind of letting go. And I think for them, I mean, we'll know probably in the next 10 years as they tell us their stories, but it was something else. They were walking towards something, but we were really detoxing and letting go of our own need to control. I mean, we're firstborn kids. We're both firstborn children. And so you can imagine the tugs with two firstborn parents raising a firstborn kid. So yeah, there's been a lot of fights for control in our household. And yeah, this was just for us. It was a kind of moment of detox and confession of what it would mean to meet an uncontrollable God, an uncontrollable path.
Yeah. That's so perfect. And it goes right into the next question that I had. Um it was a question that had been written down that I was like, I like this question and I wish I would have thought of it. But this is exactly what I was thinking as I was reading it. But um you describe modern parenting as often focused on preparing the road for our children rather than preparing our children for the road. Man, that is challenging. That is challenging. So, what practical advice would you offer parents struggling with the anxiety of letting go?
Well, one thing that I think became clear for us as we're walking this is we're each having our own experience. Like their lives, it is my greatest wish that my child know God and know their purpose and feel connected in the world and live with a sense of fullness. But I can't make that happen.
Yeah.
In fact, if I try to make it happen, I'm probably going to make it worse. I'm going to keep it from happening. And so there's something really beautiful about being on this walk and thinking we may be all sort of in the same place, we're spaced out, but we're all having our own experience. And God has a message for each of us that's the same in the sense of I love you and you're mine, but it's also
Yeah.
different. It's unique to each person, and the
Yep.
things that we're struggling with and the visions for our future, they're all unique. And so there's some sort of sense for us of entrusting these children to God. They never were ours to begin with. That's the lie. I mean, I think that's the awareness of like, we couldn't have prevented some horrible thing from happening to them at any point in their lives. And we couldn't have, ensured that they would have a good life. But God loves them more than we do. And what would it look like to let them uh, be on this journey with God, invite us in as much as they'd like, trust that the work that we've done is good work and that it's coming to an end in some ways and as different forms of relationships form. So I think part of it is just that. Like God is real. God's already talking to them, whether they're aware or not, they're going to be becoming more aware of it. And how do you trust that process?
Yeah, and I think a big piece of that quote or the kind of metaphor that we're preparing the road for our kids, not our kids for the road, has a lot to do with our relationship to time. And one of the reasons we feel so much like we have to prepare the road is because we think the real payoff of our parenting is what happens in the future. So parenting all becomes about preparation for some future. So we have to prepare the road so they can get to the future. Because if the road's too bumpy, they'll never get to the future that we need, and they'll never be happy in that future. So it's all, I mean, it's a really kind of quite absurd reality. Like I have to create the future for my kid, even though I'm in the present and my kid is in the present. And I think the real spiritual gift of a pilgrimage is it demands you stay in the present, that
Yeah.
you just
That's
walk
good.
in this moment, be in this moment with these people.
Mhm.
The only thing before you is the movement towards the next place you're going to sleep, really, or ultimately, it's the movement towards the holy thing you're walking towards. In this walk, it's the holy island, and that's going to take 6 days. So you're just walking to the next step before the next rest, before the next meal, which in themselves are all gifts from God, and they're all a kind of movement into our own finitude. The fact that we have no tomorrow without the gifts of God. I mean, this is the Lord's Prayer in many ways,
Yeah.
It's like, give me tomorrow. Tomorrow is a gift from
Mhm.
you. So I think that's a big thing as modern people, as modern parents, we become less concerned. I mean, it's a really odd thing, but we become less concerned with the present moment with our children, what it means to be in conversation with them right now in this moment. And we just think the good parent is preparing for 10 years from now, or,
Yeah.
uh, you know, filling up their backpack metaphorically with all sorts of resources that they'll be able to grab those resources and cash them in to live their dream. Like, we think that the good parent is helping their kid live their dream. Well, that's a projection in the future. And the
Mhm.
only way you can even get to a dream or have a life that knows what's worth living for is to give our kids a sense of what it means to live well now together in this moment, what it means to be bodies and souls in this time together. And
Yeah.
that's the real gift. I mean, I think through the Christian tradition, that's been the gift of pilgrimage, is it asks you to narrow your scope of time and just be in the now with
Mm.
those around you. And that's why in the book we try to mention all these people we meet, because you don't plan this, but this is a model, if you will, a kind of picture of life. These people come in and out of it, and some of them drive you crazy, like some of the other pilgrims we met were weird people. Some of them seem like great people, and here you are journeying with them for this time. So there's just a beautiful way that a pilgrimage is a kind of lifetime in miniature. Therefore, it's a perfect place to kind of think about parenting as really parenting as for a lifetime. And that means trying to stay in this moment and moving
Mhm.
together from one step to the next.
Mm.
Which also gives the pilgrim perspective to almost anything you do. I mean, baking Christmas cookies, being in the garden, taking your dog for a walk. I mean,
Yeah.
any of these things can be either a task to accomplish or something that you're preparing for what's needed in the future, or they can just be this moment where God is present and we are present alongside of our kids, and anything can happen in that moment.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that. When you got back from pilgrimage, I'm gonna manage expectations a little bit. 'Cause I just wanna know, was it a profound change in your family? Was it just something that you're like, well, your kids came home and they're like, "Thank God, technology." I mean, what was the response? And then
Yeah.
in the short term, and then have you noticed anything, like, for you or for your children in the long term that was affected
Yeah.
by the pilgrimage?
mm,
Well, the first thing I would say is just like to shatter all illusions that this is in itself a quick fix. Like, there were awful moments on the pilgrimage where,
Yeah.
particularly me, I mean, I think we all had our own, but I had mine of like trying to take control back. Like I think we talk about in the book, like first day, we haven't even really found the path yet, and all of a sudden our youngest is like, I need ice cream. And I just lose my mind. Like, no, we are not stopping for ice
That's not what
cream.
we're here for.
Exactly.
This is
And
spiritual.
yeah, and then talk about not being able to stay in the moment. Like, she's living in the moment. I'm hungry right now. What am I supposed to do with that? And I'm like, why didn't you eat breakfast? So now we're in the past trying to rewrite the past, and it's like, and then I'm worried about the future, because if we don't get on this path, I mean, before we know it, it's going to be the middle of the night. We're going to be eaten by wolves. So so we have to go now. So I think that I hope people read this book and don't think like
Yeah.
this is some kind of well, there's no model here that will
mhm.
fix your
Yeah.
parenting. And in many ways, this is in the in the vein of like Augustine's Confessions. Like, these are the confessions of control freak parents, and it did transform our parenting, and it also didn't. Like,
Yeah.
what it set up is for us to be, I think, conversation partners with our kids, if that makes sense. To be
That's so good.
um, and I think I do think that experience is extended into this period where we have
Mhm.
deeper conversations with our kids. Our kids are more open as young adults now to talking to us. But we didn't come back and feel any great, like, oh, things have changed now.
Yeah.
No, I think we felt all the anxiety rise up, and again, I think it just set us, well, it gave us a kind of experience of what it meant to be people who are in deep conversation with our kids, and that was the most important thing, maybe.
Yeah, and we didn't take the pilgrimage with the goal of making our kids want to talk to us more or something. I mean, it wasn't like this instrumentalizing pilgrimage. It was more like, we're going to surrender to this experience and just try to be present and see what happens. And we know that, this is something that's a part of our faith since its inception, and that God is meets people in this way. And so let's see what happens. And I think it's been lovely as they've become young adults. It's been a surprise that, as we've sort of backed off a little bit, they've stepped forward in ways I don't think we could have anticipated. But also, I have to say, this hitting the empty nest piece, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, it's been hilarious to have the book come out at this time, because I feel like I need to read this book now, because I'm wanting to I just keep wanting to grab on to all these details and control. I'm like, it's their life. That
Yeah.
kind of mantra, it's their life, is such a gift, because it's really true. It's not my life. I'm the background to their life. So how do I take that role?
Yeah, that's so good. I always tell people that, I always thought when my kids would become adults, that's where it'd be like, okay, now I can just relax and enjoy. And it's worse. Like parenting
It is,
adult
yeah.
children is hard
Yeah.
because you don't know, like, do you step in? Do you say something? Do you not say? And then they start becoming parents. This is where we're at now. They're all parents,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, I'm watching them do something and I'm thinking to myself, oh gosh, but do you step in? Do you let them walk
Yeah.
through with your grandchildren? What do you do? And it's like, man, Lord, you really made this hard. It would have been really good if the hard part would have been when they were younger. And we
Yeah.
could have, but it's not. It's like the hard
Mhm.
part is when they become adults. I'm
Yeah.
finding
Yeah. You always
rewarding
told yourself, like,
completely.
when they sleep
Yeah.
through the night, then it will be easy.
So
And then
much
you
easier.
realize it's not. And then
No.
it's like, well, once they're in school all day, then it will be easy. And
Yeah.
it's not. And then you
No.
think, well, once they're out of the house and at college, it'll be easy. And then it's not.
There's
And
always a new
yeah.
hard, right?
Mhm.
Eugene
And
Peterson has this great book with a weird title called like Do Your Youth. And it's from a psalm. I think it says something like Do your youth will come to you or something.
yeah.
But it's this wonderful book where he basically says, just when you think as an adult and as a parent that you've kind of like finally figured it out and you're like ready, then you get an adolescent. And
Mhm.
being given teenagers is actually also God's plan to keep working on you, because you immediately are thrown back into like, I don't have any idea what I'm doing. And like it makes you have to fall back again on God and
Yep.
to recultivate a sense of trust.
And like their teenage years are nothing like what your teenage years were
Mm.
because they're dealing with a whole world that is so different from what we grew up
Absolutely.
in, right? And so you
Mhm.
start to think about like, man, I don't even know how to help them navigate online
Mhm.
stuff or bullying or,
Right.
because when we were bullied as kids, when somebody picked on us, it was only at school and never, we could go home and go to our but now it just follows them everywhere they go. And
Mhm.
how do you
Mhm.
navigate that with a child? And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
talking about pilgrimage, all those things that, like I like that you said that you guys were walkers anyway. And you got your kids out of the house and walking, like your son, you just went to him and said, I'm taking the dog for a 3-mile walk and you're coming with me. And at first he was resistant, but then he started just doing it on his own even. And I think
Mhm.
about how busy as families we get to where we aren't intentional with our
Mm.
time with our children. And really, I mean, you guys going on your pilgrimage was awesome. And I really want to encourage you guys to read the book because I'm telling you, it'll be fun. It's a lot of fun to read. And it's got so much insight and so much wisdom. But the thing that I learned from it, one of the things I learned is that I don't have to go on a pilgrimage to Scotland or
Mhm.
Spain or anywhere. I can do this in Minnesota, or I can do this, I can start being intentional with my child every day somewhere, because really, truly, like you said, Cara, we only get today. And Andrew said the same thing. Andy was like, time is what it is, understanding that we're only really given today. And tomorrow we can't really think about it. Preparing them for the future is, we got to do some of that. But at the same time, really what we need to do is teach them to live in the moment more and understanding today more. And, yeah, and so doing things here, like taking them on a camping trip, to the Boundary
Mhm.
Waters or canoeing or hiking up, near the North Shore or things like that that we can do just in our own area that
Mhm.
would
Yeah.
bring that relationship to our families and to our
Yeah.
kids and being intentional. is something that we can do without having to go all the way to Scotland, you know?
Mhm.
But if you can go to Scotland, by all means, do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, but I mean, a really good example of what you're saying is when you see, like, a grandparent with a 3-year-old walking and pointing things out, like, there's the
Yes.
grass, and there's the flowers, and there's
Mhm.
the dog. They're essentially on a pilgrimage. They're
Mhm.
they're walking deep into this world and, receiving it as God's gift, and, I think something really strange happens. I mean, I think we've rightly said that each stage has its own struggles,
Yeah.
but one of I think the real struggles once your kids enter into school age is that it becomes all about the future and not about the present, you know?
Yeah.
Like they say, raising small kids, the days are long, but the years are fast, you know? And
Mhm.
there's a gift in the days being long. And part of that is because you're just in this moment and taking in the delight of, this kid discovering, like a pilgrimage, grass and wet dogs' noses and,
Yeah.
a thunderstorm, and all of that is just this attentiveness, and, what happens to us as late modern people, and we think we have to give this to our kids, that we break the attentiveness and tell them to become performative
Yeah.
and to not waste time and to make sure they have a goal. And essentially we don't say this, but we essentially communicate, don't enjoy the world, extract from it. Get what out of it what you need, because you need to suck something, some resource, some perspective out of this moment so you can cash it in for something tomorrow.
Yeah.
And there's a certain way that that's a spiritual disease. And,
Yeah.
whether you go to Scotland or whether you just can go on a walk. And I do think it starts when your kids are young to be able to just say, let's be in this moment. Let's be aware. And, to your point earlier, maybe this is the absolute spiritual cancer of some of our social media and our
Yeah.
digital lives, is it keeps us from being in
Mhm.
actually this moment and taking in the surroundings we're in.
It's so true. Um, Another thing you all talk about in the book is the concept of Sabbath. And my husband and we do a Sabbath every week, and we just take a day, and it's like it's our day, and we guard it, and we're careful with it.
Mhm.
It isn't necessarily on a Sunday. It just depends on what our week looks like, but there's always one full day, one 24-hour period that we're focused. What can you talk about a Sabbath and what that looks like to yourselves as a family? What kinds of things do you do with that? And what has been like what's the fruit of that and the idea of that?
Yeah, so Sabbath, the concept of Sabbath kind of came into our lives when our kids were pretty young. My congregation practices Sabbath on a regular basis. We take 2 Sundays a month and we actually take them as Sabbath days as a whole community. So when we first started doing this, it was scary and weird and strange, and we didn't really know what we were doing. But some of the rhythms that developed for us that were really helpful were, like, for example, sitting down before the day would start and with a piece of paper, and I'd say to the kids, okay, what do you want to say yes to today, and what do you want to say no to? And really the shorthand for what do you want to say yes to remember that you're free,
Mhm.
that you belong to God, life is a gift, and what do you want to say no to that kind of keeps you from living in that way? So they would say, my daughter would often say yes to being fabulous. I'm not sure what that always meant. They
Such a
usually wanted
millennial.
art project, or yeah, and often they would say no to screens,
Mhm.
no to even play dates. Sometimes they would
Wow.
say they were able to say, I kind of need some alone time, and it really taught them how to pay attention to what their souls need. But going through the day with a sense of uh awareness and availability to joy and connection is
Mhm.
really the only sort of rules around it. We did have, for their entire childhood, the internet would shut off for 3 hours every Sunday, and it didn't matter if you had homework; you could do it before or after. There were ways that that they honored that, even when they were advanced enough to shut that back on without us knowing. Without us knowing. Yeah, so I think what's been fascinating about it is it's formed them into people who are more present and who are more
Mhm.
able to say no, who are more intentional about their choices. Sabbath is something that they grew up practicing and believing mattered, whereas still for me it's a struggle. I
Yeah.
mean, it's as adults we
Yes.
sometimes have to spend a lot of time unlearning things that kids kind of instinctively know.
Yeah. I think that's such a gift to give your child is the ability to say no and to know what they need and to protect that time and have good boundaries. That's such a gift. And it's something that, again, it's learned. Oh, it's something that you have to just practice. And if you're teaching them from the time they're young, and giving them permission to have that is just such an
Mm.
important thing. Any last thoughts or comments that you guys want to make? Or I've just enjoyed our conversation so much. It went so fast.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah. Well, I just appreciate your guys' time. You guys can find, I'm going to link everything, of course, like always in the description of the podcast. So you'll find a link to this book. It is coming out. I didn't catch when it was coming out. It's out now, right?
It's out, yeah.
It's out now. So, okay, good. So I'm excited that we can get this to you guys. It's from Brazos Press, which is a part of Baker Publishing, and it's the pilgrimage into letting go. And I just want to thank you guys so much for being a part of our podcast today and taking time out of your very busy life to just talk with me about your book and about your experiences and to encourage the families that listen to us.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us. And
Thanks.
if the families are interested in reading it together and talking about it with other parents, there's a study guide, a group discussion guide that a friend of ours really graciously put together
Oh,
that's
wow.
available for free. So it definitely opens the door for conversation with parents because I think we need each other. It's a
Yeah.
hard road and it's a good
Yeah.
support for one another.
For my homeschool friends, many of us have co-ops that we need to be that we're a part of, and we have families that we're there with. And those co-ops oftentimes have mom time. And this is a
Mm.
really great book. You guys are always looking for books that you guys can do mom time with. This would be a good book to do mom time with that you guys could maybe for the high school moms, but for all moms. I just think that it's something that we need to learn. I wish I would have learned this when my children were younger. So maybe I could have shifted my perspective on parenting a little bit, maybe not damage them quite so they're not damaged. They're fine. But, we give our kids challenges from time to time. We're not perfect. But I just think that this is a great book for that. And so I just want to encourage you guys to check it out, look at it, give it a good perusal. It's just a great book. It's a good read. And there's a lot of good information in there. Kara even has written, or Kara, I'm sorry, Kara, I mispronounced your name.
That's fine.
Kara's even written in there just some of her prayers that she wrote and some of the different scriptures that she used, poetry that they used for just kind of quieting your soul and your spirit and just really focusing and being intentional and in the moment a little bit. So talks about journaling, talks about Sabbath, talks about all these things that you can do. It's practical and entertaining, to be honest. So yeah, I just want to encourage you guys to grab it. So thank you guys so much for being a part of our podcast today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us.
thank you.
All right.